to the show. We're going to be having part 2 of a show that we began last week, and I want to welcome Barbara Cannon, my co-host once again, and of course the founder and CAO, Hank Roberts, of Peacemakers Incorporated.
Yes.
We're going to have a wonderful time because we're going to be talking about subjects so relevant today of what everybody's talking about. The president's mentioning it in his speech, in State of the Nation speech. And anyway, I think my first question we should do is would be really to revisit the vision and mission of Peacemakers Incorporated.
Well, actually, Peacemakers' mission is simply to deliver a system of care that addresses the needs of the greatest needs, families, schools, and communities. And we believe that by addressing those greatest needs, we will begin to move forward in eradicating the problems that exist globally.
Families, schools, and community, holistic, because when you use the word communities, that would cover the cities and the states and the subsystems throughout the nation. We have a regional focus, but you could also have a national focus, a global focus. It could be an international, because I believe children and families are suffering all over the world.
I mean, that's absolutely true. And an obvious question always comes up, are children the victim or the cause? And I clearly believe they're the victims. So it's important that we begin to eradicate, again, issues in the family, in the school, and in the community.
And I believe the victim incident and also neglect, benign neglect, because so often neglect goes on and people are staring at it, but they don't see it. They don't know what's wrong, what the issue is. And it's simply the relationship that parents can provide, grandparents. I have a friend who started a grandparent project here in the city of Berkeley. It's now about 30 years old, Dr. Lenora Poe.
Right.
And it's about parents, grandparents who had to take over the parenting duty because the biological parents were no longer available. So I really feel that it's kind of sad when you don't have a way to get people rehabilitated.
Very true.
Well, you know, what I think what excites me about this conversation and about this wonderful group of schools, there are 5 school districts you'll be talking about that you're working with now, is that everybody seems to be on the same page. We're all talking about the fact that if we don't get our communities back together, the shooting's never going to stop. Because we don't feel together anymore. We feel like everybody's alienated in our local communities. I mean, we're talking about Oakland, where we grew up and couldn't wait to run out to the school rings, the roller skating or doing, and we could do it at night and everybody was safe.
Right.
And people are scared to go out of their homes now at night. And this is all over the country.
Right.
And so everybody seems to be on the same page for the first time, I think, in a long time since I've known. We've always had different issues and agenda. The agenda now is about guns, getting them off the streets, and rebuilding our communities. And that's what's so wonderful about Peacemakers. I think you're training the young people coming up in your schools to do just that.
Absolutely. And actually, when you look at our vision, which is to create healthy families and safe communities. And that is in alignment with just what you spoke of as being the issues and the challenges in our society today.
But maybe you can answer this question I think everybody's asking. Why are families suddenly unhealthy and all of our communities are unsafe? And that means people are doing things in broad daylight that they only did at night. They're not even waiting for night. And they get away with it. So can you address that issue?
Well, there's probably different perspectives, but from my experience, I believe that a key missing benefit that our young children are not able to appreciate is the absence, or what I would call, dysfunctional villages. When I grew up, a functional village would be an example of accountability. It would be an example of individuals looking out for each other and making sure that the better good of all who live in that village was actually taken care of. Today, our villages are somewhat different in terms of its makeup. And some of the reasons why I feel strongly that things have changed is, number one, particularly for the African American village, we experienced a lot of integration. We actually left the village and moved to suburban areas. We have just a serious crisis of the media exploiting our children with sex and as well as violence.
That's right.
We have a serious breakdown of dysfunctional parenting, and we have what I call corporate flight. There was a time when many of our teachers lived in the same neighborhood in the schools that they worked in, but because of economical opportunities, a lot of the better teachers who could relate to children on a cultural level chose to make money by going into corporate America. And then lastly, the absence of the church in terms of being a pillar and a foundation for the village seems to be somewhat, not necessarily non-existing, but in somewhat of a minimum role now, which I think has devastated the village tremendously.
I believe there's something about self-esteem of adults. Many of the adults who are parents do not have a high self-esteem, and they have not been well nurtured to become healthy adults, and that therefore they cannot be healthy parents or healthy grandparents. And I think people, it's kind of like they've fallen into this because there's so many distractions from being connected, because you mentioned the fact that there's a lack of connection of the human beings that are in the society.
Yes.
And I think that often teachers are not connected the way they need to be as well.
Right.
So they don't always have high self-esteem, and they don't have a feeling that what they're doing in the classroom is working, but they can't be honest about it. So there's a lack of honesty, and there's a lack of connection with people, and not healthy relationships, a lack of those.
Well, you know, I use this analogy in our last taping that my mother and father both have a 6th grade education, but a PhD in love. And because of that love, I was able to be completely inspired to become the first college graduate in the history of both of their families. I'm saying that because their role modeling, their example was real critical. But most importantly, they trusted individuals who shared anything that any of our siblings, their siblings, were doing that was not, appropriate. We've lost trust in our communities now. Now, adults question each other when information is given about each other or about a child. And so that lack of trust has created a lot of the problems that we have in terms of the relationships between the parent, the teacher, and the child. So you're absolutely correct.
It would be very interesting to have you share why your parents were so healthy and worked in this, what you might call capacity building with success, great success. Because I think we do need to have some recipes and models for success. And often we don't have that. And when people are in a nurturing environment where they can learn those positive things, how did your parents come up with those strategies?
Well, actually, I believe one thing that is missing today that my parents were recipients of was having other relatives, like aunts and grandmothers and older cousins, who gave them some advice. Because of, and this always is very interesting when I say this, but because of welfare, there was this disconnect now of others being able to live or even visit sometimes in the homes of a lot of our single parent mothers. So they're not getting that kind of wisdom. They're not getting that kind of advice that was shared when my parents were coming along parenting. And also we have a perpetual generation of babies having babies. So there's an awful lot of immaturity in terms of not even knowing how to even understand who you are. And now you're faced with the responsibility of teaching another innocent person how to survive, and you're still in discovery. I mean, I actually know of several families today, the great-great-grandmother is still in her 50s. So it's very interesting how you asked that question. So there's just a lot of issues around lack of maturity, and lack of modeling.
And I believe what you're offering is a way to have recipes for guaranteed success.
Absolutely.
Because I think so often people learn by accident, and that's not a good recipe.
Very true.
You really need to have the right ingredients.
Well, it's very critical that we become a lot more sophisticated in terms of how we restore the village. And I think a key pillar in the restoration process would be the movement and the mobility of the church getting more involved. And what I have found to be quite successful is to collaborate, Peacemakers collaborate with churches, and through that collaboration, that gives them the opportunity to get into the schools where the children are who are having issues around behavior and issues around academics. And ultimately, by connecting with those children, then that's a gateway to begin to intercept problems within the whole family. And the key is by partnering with Peacemakers, we eliminate the conflict between church and state, because all the training that's done would be based upon Peacemakers principles. And the Bible does clearly say, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. And clearly, we all know there's a key battle that goes on that's somewhat dismissed in our society, and it's called spiritual warfare. So it is critically important that we understand spiritual warfare. And only those who understand the power in relationship to demonic forces and God, and those who are equipped know how to combat and navigate effectively to eradicate the spiritual battle. So it is imperative to me that the clergy community in general come together and begin to teach others how to win this real battle.
Well, you know, speaking of the church, it's not only the church. I find that the silence of the churches, the many churches that we have, there used to be a protest every time somebody got up and did a suggestive dance, or there was too many sexual images on television. But not only the churches, I haven't heard too much from them, but I haven't heard from the Congress. They used to haul the TV guys in there all the time and said, "What are you doing?" And they would beg them to not perform the kinds of things that I don't want to name the shows, but we know there's sexually explicit shows. And they used to talk about the hours they put it on. Now they put it on anytime they want to, and then they would go back after they had testified to Congress and would come back with something even worse, I think. They never did do anything any better. They never stopped doing what they were doing. Until now, Congress just doesn't say anything anymore. Churches don't say anything. And I remember the parents, who's heard of the PTA lately? PTA used to be the first one up and say, look, we're not going to have this. You're going against what we're doing in our schools. So why is everybody so quiet about what the media is doing, and now the media is just taking free hand in everything?
And you know, and I really believe you are driving to a major point that's often a divide in America. From my understanding, there's a conception of the black race, the white race, the brown race, the yellow race, but to my clear understanding, there's only one race, and that's the human race.
Right.
And so as we begin to move past this misunderstanding of thinking that we're divided as races and see our struggles as being a human race, then that's the beginning of mobilization and change, because dysfunctional villages has nothing to do with your socioeconomical level. It has nothing to do with where you live. A dysfunctional village can occur at any time.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's why we as the human race have to come together and begin to support each other to create change. And to me, once we get to that clear understanding, I believe that's the beginnings of significant changes in America. And that's the same conversation that our president speaks about even today.
Absolutely. I love the way he says, no more hyphenated names. There is no such thing as an Asian American, and there's no such thing as an African American or a white American or any other kind of American. We're all Americans.
Exactly.
And we all belong to the same human race.
Exactly.
And we are from the same source, which I think is really important, because then that takes us back up to the beginning. In the beginning,
that's right.
we've always been of one family. And so the people that, if you want to divide, want to rule something, you come in and take over by dividing and conquering. And this is what they've done to us. And now it's gotten so bad.
Right.
I'm not joking about this, but it looks like we're getting hit from heaven itself with meteors. I don't know any other time that it ever actually, it always just missed the earth. But now they're zooming in and they're hitting their target. But
well, you know, it's just fundamental things that we have to look at and laugh at. For example, if you were an individual that needed a kidney transplant, do you say, I only want a white person?
No.
Or do you say, I just need a kidney transplant?
Give me what you got.
You know what I'm saying? If your life is on the line, you're not going to have a preference.
No.
You're going to want whoever matches you to keep you alive.
That's right.
And so it's clear, too, that when someone is bleeding and you don't know their color, you can't say, oh, that's the blood of a black man. That's the blood of a, because clearly we are all the human race. And once we get simple and clear, then we can really, really move forward and create change. So our problem is a problem that the human race has to rally around and come together and decide that we want to do something.
You know, I think the other metaphor is if you see a drowning man out there, he's literally down, pops his head up every once in a while, but a brown hand comes to reach him and pull him out of the water, I don't think it's going to say, no, I can't come with you. I've got to go with somebody else.
That's really true.
And so the things that really are meaningful to us, which means holding on to our lives in any way that we can, we're going to forget color. And we do it, and it's gone over and over again. I'm sure in the military, how many times a white guy's back has been covered by a black soldier, and he didn't say a word.
Absolutely.
And we'll talk really about the Tuskegee Airmen, where the film showed that a lot of guys were racist from the South, hadn't let them come into the bar and drink with them and welcome them. One guy came out because they did not lose. He said, I want to tell you in front of my colleagues, we never lost one plane since you guys have been covering our backs. They had to admit that in this film. And they couldn't have told it unless somebody actually did it.
Right.
So it shows that people can change, but we need to advertise when they do change. We know we talk about the terrible things we do to each other. There's a whole lot of goodness going on. And guess what the paper says? Because I know I work for a paper name I will not say. I asked the editor one time, why do I see only the bad things? He said, well, let me put it this way, Jerry. He said, you come over from Oakland to work at this newspaper every day in San Francisco. If you make it safe on BART and get there or by car, that's not news. But if you have an accident on the bridge, it's news. Well, I'm sorry to say that's what we do, don't we?
It's absolutely
because
true.
We don't have enough room to say that everybody got over safely. But one car, one person who beats up his wife or murders his wife, or there's a shooting in the that's the thing that everybody wants to, the
Gets excited
dysfunction
about. That's right.
we're interested in. So in a way, the newspapers are going to have to find a way to make functional things, happy occasions, popular again.
Exactly.
And I don't know how they're going to do it.
Well, I believe that the dinosaur days of the 20th century mentoring no longer is effective, which will tie into what you just asked. The 21st century mentoring now is the key to causing the transformations that we need to see happen. The 21st century mentoring model.
Now tell me about the mentoring model.
Well, the 21st century mentoring model simply means that the entire human race has an opportunity to participate. For example, there could be a young boy, regardless of his ethnicity, that's having some problems with his behavior, having some problems with his grades, and perhaps his father or mother needs some skill set in terms of a new career change. So the 21st century mentoring model creates what's called poly-mentoring, means that you could have one of a lighter persuasion that we would call the Caucasian ethnicity, could teach this child how to be successful in math. You could have one of an ethnicity known as the African American, if you will, ethnicity, teach this child life skills so that he or she would learn how to appropriately respond to different situations that they may encounter in life. You could have one called the Chinese or Asian ethnicity, could teach these parents or enroll them into some kind of vocational training program and assist them in learning how to be successful, whatever that vocational trade is. So if you begin to look at what I'm saying, we move past saying, oh, that's a black race issue.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a white race issue.
Yeah, in a way, what I hear you saying, you could take what is and work with it.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of like you don't have salt, but you might have a substitute that you could put in if you have a recipe. If you have whatever you have, and I think that's what's missing in classrooms when teachers are not able to work with the differences. Because even if they were all the same skin color, they would be different. Each one is unique. So their unique skills or their unique needs for other skills.
Absolutely.
I remember going to, I had a project once with the state of California to work with successful schools, and we went to see a school in Los Angeles where the 5th graders tutored I think it was the 1st graders, the 4th graders, they each had a system where every part of that school, and this was a predominantly black school, but the students were helping each other. And it really became a successful model for the state of California.
Absolutely.
But you know, one of the things we're going to have to deal with is competitiveness. You see, we have these games with the football and baseball and golf and all these things where somebody has to be a winner and everybody else is a loser. Now, the way it spills over into these programs we're talking about is people feel, and I think you've heard about this, well, I have to train this guy in my job and he gets the better job and I stay where I am. You know, I have to teach him and they promote him instead of me. And that happens in the racial settings where many of a person of color has had to teach a white person because the white person thinks that the black race will be elevated if they give up their place in life. They don't realize if you stop to think about being human, we're not talking about race anymore except the one race, the human race. And I wonder, I kept saying, how many black young children coming into the kindergarten age up that were told they were not good enough for math could have put Sputnik in the air before the Russians.
Absolutely.
You see, because we now know these kids have math.
Absolutely.
If you give them a chance. So I think one of the reasons why we don't have all the races come together, the white race thinks they'll lose their supremacy instead of thinking, my God, we can have an even greater country if we have given people this place to live in, which we're talking about the Latino at the moment. We're talking about that. Look at all these wonderful people. We have Supreme Court justices. It makes the country look better.
Absolutely.
And until we change to that mindset, I think we ought to work on that mindset in some way in order for other people to say, you don't threaten me if you get better grades. I'm glad because you're going to be one of the humans of which I belong to that race. And it's going to become a better world for my kids to live in. How do you get that going, that dialogue?
And I believe that as you're speaking, and the more there is integration in relationships and marriages, we're moving into what I call the age of humanitarianism.
Yes, we are.
Where now it's about how can I help? How can I assist? And so skin color becomes less of an issue. Because even if you see our young people today, they're already looking and thinking different than how the Stone Age was about what color you are. So I think by sheer integration of the different ethnicities, we're beginning to bridge away from this whole challenging misunderstanding about race. So as we move into, the humanitarian age, these issues become less of a relevance in terms of a problem.
And I think the one thing that we're discussing today that helps us not be competitive, to understand without, you don't even have to think about it, it all hits us, is the green movement. If we don't have any air, I don't care what race you are, you're not going to breathe. You know?
That's right.
And if you have polluted water, and we're all going to get sick from the same water.
Exactly.
So if we can begin to change the dialogue to what is it we have in common that we all need that says, I need you, and if you have a brain better than mine, goodness gracious, use
That's
it.
a resource, yes.
And
Yes,
that's a great,
all the resources.
and that's a great example of why we're talking about a human race issue.
That's right.
So it's no longer, this thing about, let them solve it. No, it's no longer they, them, and those. It's now us and a we.
Well, in the 1 minute we have left, I think we really agree on the one thing or two things we really have to do. In order to get this dialogue going, we should start introducing the word human beings, that we're all one, Stop the hyphenation, but certainly stop the competition Because my God, if you got somebody who's going to make the world a better place, what would we do without Steve Jobs?
That's right.
My God, there's one man that changed the whole nation. Well, suppose all the black people I see running around with their phones, loving them to death. So they say, well, I don't think I'll use this phone because that guy was white. They're not going to do that.
Exactly.
They accept it
That's
once
right.
it's something they can use. So if we can get a consciousness raising that if I do something better than you, you're supposed to support me and help me because you're really helping yourself.
And you know in the essence of everything you're saying embodies Peacemakers Incorporated, because we embrace all people.
And you embrace the human resources and the physical resources. That would get at all of what you said about the environment and the pollution and those kind of things.
Exactly.
The focus is now about staying alive and being healthy.
Absolutely.
Right. Exactly.
Healthy.
We're trying to stop the next meteor from happening, but we'll end on this note that we now know that we all belong together. We can't live without each other. So we've got to start loving each other. If that's the way you want to continue Earth, thank you very much. And good luck in everything you're doing, Hank, because I know that Barbara joins me in saying that this is on the right track. And thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Hello, I'm Social Security Commissioner Michael Astro.
And I'm Scott Gould, Deputy Secretary for Veterans Affairs.
Every 2 minutes, the U.S. government receives an identity theft complaint.
Recently, we've learned that more and more people are getting scammed out of their money when they give their personal information to criminals who contact them by phone, email, or text.
These criminals often say you've won the lottery, or they claim to be from a government agency needing certain information, like a Social Security number.
Treasury, Social Security, Veterans Affairs, and other government agencies will never contact you by phone, text, or email and ask you for this information. If you get contacted like this, it's a scam. Hang up, delete the email, call the authorities.
Don't let criminals take your money. Protect yourself. Never give your Social Security number or bank account information to anyone unless you initiated contact.
And watch your accounts to make sure that all the activity is yours.
Don't be a victim. Visit stopfraud.gov or call 877-ID-THEFT to learn more.